So at this year's E3, Phil surprised a lot of people by getting up on stage and announcing that Microsoft is already deep into work on the next Xbox console that's set to release. And a lot of rumors are saying 2020. And now he's talking about what he wants that console to do. In an interview with Giant Bomb, Phil says he wants the next Xbox to deliver higher frame rates, and he wants a better balance between the CPU and the GPU on consoles because it's, quote, out of whack compared to the PC. And he's absolutely correct in his assessment. I think it's an absolute shame that you've got games playing on the world's most powerful console that drop down sometimes below 30 frames per second. Now, people blame the devs whenever this happens, but it's not like it's just happened to one or two games. It's been multiple games. And so I think you got to look at what the devs are having to work with. And we all know now that they're having to work with a pretty weak CPU. And this is something that I've complained about for forever, but the Defense Force tells me that they're more than satisfied with 30 frames per second. It's so smooth. It's a really smooth 30 frames per second. But of course, now that Microsoft is also saying that we need higher frame rates, expect those goalposts to start moving just like they did with resolution. You know, I used to talk about how resolution and the number of pixels that you have on screen isn't the most important thing in gaming. And a lot of people used to agree with me. They used to say and preach the same thing. But then once, Xbox started talking about 4K and resolution, now that's all they can talk about. And so now that's the focus. Whatever, my, impressions and my opinions haven't changed with the wind. The buzzwords have been 4K. And both Sony and Microsoft built and marketed their system so they could talk about 4K. And then they left a weak CPU in the system and focused almost entirely on GPU just so they could brag about the number of pixels on screen. Anybody who's into PC gaming, though, knows that there has to be a good balance. You don't want to go build a system and buy the top-of-the-line high-end GPU and then cheap out on the CPU. There's got to be a balance. And it's just a shame that this is the focus that it took over the last few years. And now it seems like we're finally going to focus on the things that matter. Me personally, I'll take 1440p with 144 frames per second over 4K 30 every single time. And I'm running a 1080 Ti, so it's not like 4K is out of my options. I definitely have the option to go 4K, and sometimes I do. It just depends on if I can get enough frame rates to go along with it where I'm happy. I'm more than happy with 1440p and everything turned on to the max than, to have to turn certain things off in order to reach that resolution. Because a lot of people are under the impression that it's just frame rates that have suffered with this, with the focus being on resolution over the last few years, but it's not. You look at different games that they have displayed on Digital Foundry, for instance, when they compare it to the PC. No doubt some games hold up extremely well on console compared to the PC with max settings. But you can look at other games and see that a lot of options, a lot of graphical options had to be either turned off or turned way down just so they could then brag about, well, yeah, we reached 4K resolution. And so you're not getting the graphical detail that you may have gotten if you would have just went with a lower resolution and then turned on more features. A lot of times the games will actually look better even at a lower resolution if you're able to turn on all those settings to the max. So people, want to brag about 4K, but they don't point out all the things that had to suffer in order for that to happen. So the next Xbox and next PlayStation has to hit 60 frames per second, I think, at a bare minimum. And I hope it goes well beyond that, but 60 minimum. And I'm glad Microsoft is talking about this, and hopefully it'll get the hardcore rabid fans to go along with it, because this is the push that needs to happen. This is the push that should have already happened. But you want more options in your games just besides the resolution. And many games are including options these days, thankfully, like Horizon 4. It was announced that on the Xbox One X, it's going to have a 60 frames per second option. I think that is fantastic. It needs to continue to happen, and instead of being the exception, it needs to be the standard. And so the new systems have to break free from the old ones and give gamers the performance that they've paid for. No one should be playing a game on a premium console at 30 frames per second. And definitely not under 30 frames per second. So post your thoughts down below. Are you happy with this news? What else do you want to see from the next generation Xbox and PlayStation. That does it for me, The Red Dragon. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.